this list. So far, it's really about attracting talent, whether it's out of school or those who have some level 3 to 5 experience in respective fields. And then the awareness. The industry is very underrepresented, and so people are not aware of us as an option in their career when they think about their future, and also how really transferable our industry is with all the different skill set. Because whether you're in law, science, whether you are an operator, mechanic, we need all those skill sets in our business, yet again, those aspects are not highlighted enough and well. And then also there's the skills that we're seeing, and that's one area that I want to talk a little bit more about. But certainly whether it's math or technology, especially in the trades, some of these skills that are causing some challenges in doing their job and doing it well. And then there's also the generational differences, and again, there are tools and ways, which we'll hear about later, about how to bridge that. But clearly, those things are in place because we do see those differences, whether it's how people think or how they learn things. There's a different ways that we approach it. So that's the list we have so far. And before we elaborate on those, more thoughts on some of the challenges.
So June, I'd like to piggyback on what Paula mentioned. I work in the same organization as her, and I definitely
Sure.
agree. Math is a big challenge to recruit folks. And I think part of the challenge with math is twofold. Either that we get folks that, and someone else mentioned the benefits and the stability and the type of organizations that we have are very attractive to a lot of folks that are been in the workforce for a while, but now when they come into a role that requires those math tests, they've been out of math for a long time. But now they're looking for that stability, but because they're now trying to be tested on math, they're just not there. Then the other fold is the recruiting directly out of high school. And Melissa mentioned in her presentation about our industry not being sexy, which is absolutely true. So young high school students are not attracted to our industry because of that, lack of sexiness. So if they are strong in math, they might try to go into an industry like computer science or IT or something that is more attractive for that generation.
So would you say when you talk about the younger generation, particularly out of high school or out of college, is it, because there's reasons why we're not getting to them, right? And we talked about sort of the lack of awareness, our industry being underrepresented or not really understood as to all the different offerings that we provide, whether it's benefit related or opportunities or skill sets related. Do you see other reasons? You talked about how we're not promoting it, it's not that attractive to people. It's not exciting. What are we doing or what should we be doing to make it more attractive? And again, that's more solution side, but to understand why this isn't happening. What are we doing wrong, or what are we not doing, in your opinion?
I think, in my opinion, historically, our industry has been, hide under the rug, and if you're not visible, then everything is good. You only notice when problems happen. So now we're trying to, as an industry, trying to be more upfront and do more public outreach, and fix our image a little bit to where we're in front of the issues rather than behind the issues. So it's a historical issue, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if anyone would disagree, but our industry is like always fly under the radar. And I remember people telling me when I started in the industry, the best project is the one that no one ever heard of, right? Because that means there's no protest, there's no resistance. And that's the kind of the way that we approach. And if anyone disagrees, please speak up about that comment. So not hearing anyone challenge that or push back on that, why is it? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I like to add that I think there is a reason why we have been so far on the radar, and I think and Annis, if I'm pronouncing your name right, is hitting on it, and is that the only time you hear about issues in our industry is when it's negative. And so I think our response to that was to say, is to stay under the radar, because we haven't learned how to deal with the negative side or of being upfront. So we bring ourselves out, we draw attention to ourselves. Now people start thinking about the broken pipes or the potential of the broken pipes or all that kind of stuff. And we're not politically ready to deal with it, or from a leadership perspective, ready to deal with it when it happens. And so I think, so for that reason, we've avoided being out front. And I think it's become a cultural thing for the industry not to be out front. And so we got to do something about that and get better at dealing with being out there and handling the people and the good and the bad that comes with being known.
So to both of you, is this something that you felt for years? Is this something fairly in the last several years? At what point did you start saying, you know, we have been operating this as like this in an industry under the radar, but that's not working anymore? When did that realization come to you? And we'll start here with Scott and then maybe jump back to Annis and others.
Which Scott you talking about?
Oh, you. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, Robert. You're Robert.
Yeah, all right. All right.
Sorry, Robert.
Well, for me, I've been in the auto plant I mentioned closed in 2010, and a few months after closure, I was blessed to land the job in the water industry, and I've been learning about it ever since. And so for me, almost immediately, it became aware to me when I started understanding the water and how vast it was, how fascinating it was, how broad the industry was. And it became very clear to me, why did I not know about this thing? And almost immediately I'm thinking, wow, I wish I had been in this all the time I spent in manufacturing. Because it's just fascinating. And also how everything's interconnected. And just if I can tell a quick story, one of my epiphany moments was I went to a webinar, a seminar Hawk put on, and I'm thinking I'm only going to see people that have similar jobs like me there. And then they did introductions, and it was about 4 or 5 people from Marine World. Marine World is a amusement park that have dolphins and whales and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, why are they here? And for a minute I was dumbfounded and said, why are they here? And then a few minutes later, it dawned on me, because they're taking care of water too. Yeah. And so, and there's no interconnectivity. It's like we're just totally not related, and so we're in vacuums. And so for me, it was almost immediate that we must be intentionally staying in this mode for some reason, that with the beauty that we bring and the diversity and the opportunities, how is this not spoken about? It doesn't make sense at all.
Okay. Annis, what about you? When did you come to that realization?
I think from my perspective, I think we came to that realization with the consent decrees that were going around the country. So we were one of the fortunate organizations to get a consent decree back in 2008 timeframe. And that really highlighted issues that we have in terms of sanitary sewer overflows and how that impacts the environment. We knew about it, obviously. Now that we have a regulatory agency really putting a highlight on that and being sued by the Department of Justice per se, and part of their requirements is to have public meetings discussing what our plan is to address these issues, really gave us a push and a need to have a kind of communications effort. So that's one fold. The other fold I would say is, how many organizations here have a marketing department, right? None, probably. Maybe we have a communications department of 1 or 2 people that just communicate status of projects or so on and so forth, but not necessarily be upfront talking about, some of the meetings we have and some of the advantages that we have and how we can be an attractive organization. We don't have that marketing niche, whereas when the social media exploded in the last 10 years, that was an opportunity that we could use to put our message out there for free practically, without having to spend a lot on marketing that our organizations just are not equipped to do.
Well, at Ennis, we have, I would call what you a marketing wing, and we're highly engaged in it. In fact, in our organization, the person who's over our civic engagement, that means they handle all the public engagements, whatever it is, in all aspects. That person has now become a chief executive in our organization. It wasn't at that level before. And so we see the importance of it, and it's become a bigger part of our organization and what we do.
So Will, I saw you jump on the screen. Did you want to say something?
Not particular to this. I could pivot maybe a little bit to the topic of technology. The thought is constantly an issue with us, I think, is, and we talked a little bit about, the job and the skill set of today versus the jobs and skill sets that we need tomorrow. We don't know what those skill sets might be yet. But we struggle with having staff that will get into a position or a field or a line of business in our organization, and they get comfortable and they see the way the job's been done, and hey, I'm going to go do that. And just as maybe the industry is a little averse to risk, those individuals sometimes are averse to risk and don't want to put themselves out there and take on new challenges or skill sets because, not in the job description, or they feel there's a risk to them. So that's something we're working through today. And I'm curious if others see that or have had other approaches to how they can develop new skills that, weren't on the map 18 months ago, but hey, we need someone that can figure out this problem.
Yeah, I know I called on George, who goes by Scott. So we haven't heard from you, Scott. So do you have maybe something to add to what Will just laid out, or even the previous comments about, I know there was an interesting word that was mentioned, marketing by Annis, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but any reaction, Scott?
Yeah, quite a bit of reaction, actually.
Okay, good. I sensed it.
Yeah, we've been for about 13 years growing our own, especially in the operators and the collection workers segments of our workforce, by training them with a customized internal training program. And then the last 6 years or so, we've also been reaching out to the communities, to the high schools, etc., to make them aware of these jobs that we have, because we care to reflect the population in which we serve in the 7-county metro area of Minnesota. And so we've had good results from that, reaching out and getting diverse work candidates for our workforce, and then growing our own, like I said, through customized 6-month training program, which is a combination of OJT and non-OJT. As far as the topic of helping people take a risks or moving maybe to different positions or cross training, etc., I think we've gotten to that point as we've got a bit of a career ladder built within the program, where a person that came in and was an operator trainee then becomes an operator, then becomes a business unit coordinator, and then has an opportunity to become a program supervisor, which is in my group, which is training and writing job aids and doing root cause analysis, etc. And then have an opportunity from there to become an assistant business unit manager, and then a business unit manager. So we have some different career ladders built into the process as well.
That's great. I mean, you talked about how not having internal training. I think sometimes we don't think a little bit enough about, once we bring people in, how do we additionally train them so they can go lateral to different positions or promote up? And I think that, goes back to some of the skills concerns that Paula had laid out. What about you, Sandy? What are your thoughts so far?
I agree a lot with that. Our big area is teaching people or helping people learn to be agile. We're definitely dealing with a large section of our workforce who is, I think we have like a 42% eligible to retire over the next 5 years, which is huge. So we're really feeling like a drain in the knowledge. And what has happened is because we weren't really so good because of, because of being in the government sector, we have in New York civil service. So, it's not in my job description. You can't assign work across. It's made it very difficult, and it's become so siloed that trying to break those things down and create, lattices, not just ladders up, is really been a significant piece of our focus. Succession planning is 110% on our forefront.
So why are there silos? Is it sort of institutional? Is it cultural? How do you attribute that?
I think it's twofold. I think first is that a lot of people, because we had a lot of people that were hired around the same time as our business got bigger, the promotional opportunities weren't always there. So people kind of felt like their knowledge and their expertise was their power and their chance to advance. So they weren't really good. They're not really good at wanting to share that. And then, when someone does come in and you want to really expand that, the culture was much more of, that same thing that was described. We're a duck and cover kind of organization for the most part. So it's not just that as a whole, water is trying to, or not by choice, but has kind of flown under the radar. We have a lot of employees who do that well, as in addition to that. So, they come in, they do these great things, and either they don't want the recognition or it's just seen as part of, their day to day, so they might not get it. So that's created a real issue for where we're concerned. So all of the programs that everybody's talking about are things we're in the process of, really delving into, whether it be apprenticeships, as well as outreach to our local colleges and getting more involved.
No, that makes sense.
Us a little bit better.
No, and I think when we talk about sort of being risk adverse as an industry, and you mentioned the word agile, there's really there's an industry mindset of sort of not being want to be seen, but internally from an organizational employee level, there's also that. So there's this sort of the organizational effect of it and also the external world. So we have about 5 minutes until we go back to the report out, and I want to do a little recap of what we discussed so that you can let me know if I need to fix something or add something or take something out. But any comments before I get into the recap? Okay. So here are some of the issues that were identified in this discussion, and I so appreciate everyone's feedback and input because you really, I think, touched on all the key areas, at least from my experience, and you articulated it really well, and I learned a lot. But let's start with, again, being able to attract the talent, whether it be out of schools or colleges or those who have, less than 5 years on the job experience, because as an industry, we are accustomed to flying under the radar, and so therefore we are underrepresented. There's a lack of awareness about our industry, number one, and all the different opportunities that exist in our industry. And I would say thirdly, the marine park example is we don't often even see ourselves how we are connected to so many other areas that have water component or skills component that transfer really well. Then there's also the skill sets. Again, after people have been on the job for a while, or maybe we're not getting those people's skill sets out of school, but it could be math, it could be technology. So we're seeing skill level challenges and deficiency of getting those skills into our industry. But also once we bring them into our organization, there isn't enough maybe attention or investment into internal training that helps people move laterally or promote. So I like that analogy of ladders and lattices. And then there's the generational differences, how we learn, how we think about things, the things that we value. And again, we'll touch upon how we kind of bridge some of that. And then the notion of being adverse to risk. As an industry, we're not agile, right? These are terms that you all use because you have been visionaries and you have been in the forefront of this. But as an industry, we are, we're in the public safety. We deal with health and safety. So we can't take risks because we can't afford to fail. And that notion is very still, I think, prominent in our industry. Then there's the diversity. Again, reflecting those we serve was a phrase that I really like, because it's background, ethnicity, it's perspectives, all these things that allow us to be relevant and be effective to those we serve. And we're seeing a little bit of well, not a little bit, but we're seeing quite a bit of deficiency there. And then just kind of going back to this idea of adverse to risk coming out of fear, and maybe some bad experiences when you put ourselves out there. The same thing for the employees. There's this siloed, and as much as we work to break down those walls, I do think that generally speaking, we do see those silos still within our organization. So this sort of lack of knowledge transfer and sharing really works against us, especially when we're talking about how do we evolve our organization. And so these are some of the challenges that I picked up on in listening to all of you. And these are all related, right? These don't exist on its own. They all are related in how they are an issue and the impact that they're creating in our industry and the organization. So anything to correct, add, or delete from anyone? Okay. So Sunil, I think we are right on time.
Right. June, I just want to pose one, because I was in the other session and came back. How this group thinks about automation and more digital, how they see as a threat to the workforce, or because some of the worker may feel that automation and all those, like in automobile and other industry, they feel as a threat. So what's the view from utilities bringing these more automated technologies or digital technology? May some of the worker may be out of job.
Can I speak to that? This is
Absolutely.
Scott Bose. Just this past week with the pandemic and all going on, we're looking at ways to support our frontline people when we can't be there to support them physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've introduced remote support technology.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you've heard of Chalk, for example. Where on the front line, an employee could show us what's happening to the equipment and the process to their manager or our engineer, who might be 1,000 miles away at home or whatever. And we've gotten not really interested. If you can see how I do the work and what I do here, then maybe my job is threatened, or our positions are threatened. So I've gotten that response recently.
I would echo that. We have some of our recent automation, even pre-COVID. We had a lot of pushback on that. We had a lot of people who felt that it was difficult learning. There was a lot of there are pieces that we need to really consider how adults learn different, as well as there's a lot of fear element that it's going to, that they're going to be outpaced by technology and not able to keep up. So you have people who may be 10 or 15 years from retirement who are struggling to learn to use a new tablet, and they really feel the pressure. And for the younger generation, this is where that multi-generation piece in the workforce really comes into play, because I see as an opportunity where the younger generation, who is more adaptable to technology, can share their experiences, and maybe the knowledge can transfer the other way. But I don't think we capitalize on that enough, because I think we may be working in how our work groups are. We might group people together more in an age dynamic group. So we lose some of the ability to pull on the strengths of both generations.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
It's interesting, in some of these points, the word fear comes along. And I think I will kind of highlight that too, is that there is a fear of different types. Any more comments to Sunil's question?
This is Will again. I think I'd just jump in real quick. I don't think this is the utility room. I don't think any of us feel that we have enough people to do the things that we need to do in a year or 10 years. And similarly, we don't have enough money to do the things that we need to do in 10 or 100 years. So snagging that sustainable word, we're always trying to get to that point of being more efficient, more productive. And as far as I'm aware, I mean, all of the artificial intelligence or machine learning or decision support tools that any of us are probably looking at, none of them are going to replace people in my mind. So it's about framing those tools and those solutions for the worker, how it's going to help you, whether it's something in the field or something in the office, or here's how we're going to plan our capital program, into being more efficient so we can go and do more things.
Great. Okay, so June, I think we are on time. We need to leave. So all of you guys can, June, anything else you need to capture before we leave?
No, at the next breakout session, I want to elaborate on,
Sure,
we'll talk
sure.
about another, so it's good.
Sure. Okay, so everyone can leave. You can leave.